And we'll get started. Couple of weeks ago, I did an introduction to the five elements meditation. It was sort of an outline, but it attracted a lot of interest, and I received quite a few email about about that particular method of meditation. Where did it come from? What does it look like in its complete form? And so I thought I'd answer some of these questions. Why not? I mean, after all, that's what I'm here for. And in theory, through donation, that's what I get paid for. So I thought, well, why not? And here on the Sensei Mui show, hosted by Shaku Mui Shinshi, that would be me, um, I thought to myself, I may as well do this. Since I didn't give the complete version of the meditation the last time, just the outline to pique people's interest, it seems like some individuals suffered great cataclysm in their life, while others simply discovered their coffee got cold. Anyway, so here we go. First of all, this meditation actually comes from the Ten Kasina meditation found in the Visuddhimagga and in the Pali Canon. And done in this particular way is called a yoga vachara exercise. Yoga vachara, not to be confused with Yogacara, which is the Mahayana school, which is going to bring me to an interesting point here shortly. In the original version of this, people would make plates, colored plates. There was a red one, a black one, a yellow one, a green one, and so forth. And also they would get a dish of water, or they would sit near water and just watch the water. They would use lights. Today when we use light, we think of candlelight. Now they would use sunlight, because candlelight has more akin to fire than it does to light, and so forth. And so when Yoga Vachara came around, and the evidence is that it happened fairly soon after the Buddha's death, perhaps, Parinibbana. Buddhists don't die, they just go to Parinibbana and get recycled at the bookstore. So the Yoga Vachara, it seems to have begun quite early, and it's kind of an esoteric form of Buddhism based upon the Pali Canon. And it's gaining quite a resurgence in Thailand under the title of Dhammakaya, the Dhammakaya movement. But there are some issues with that, political and dharmic as well, how it's being presented in Thailand today. Cambodia seems to be the place where this is still happening. About 1820 to 1830, there was a movement within Theravada Buddhism to streamline, to modernize, to impress the colonizers, that would be European Christians, and not look so superstitious. So Yoga Vachara as a practice was then suppressed. I can't think of a better word. I was fishing for one that sounded a little bit more polite, but let's call a shovel a spade. It was suppressed, and after 100 and some years, well, 200 years, it's actually back, and it's back in some really interesting forms that comply totally with the Pali Canon, with the Visuddhimagga, with the Vimuttimagga, the Path of Liberation. These great commentaries that were written around 5 to 700 BCE, or no, excuse me, BC, CE, Common Era, this one, this era that we're in now. And so by about 800 years after the Buddha's death, the Yogavichara movement was like the thing to do, and it remained the thing to do within sects and schools that used the Pali Canon, and until the 1820s. When did it start? Probably while Buddha was alive. There's some indications of that in the Pali Canon. And the practitioners of this were called samana in the Pali, or shamana, shaman in Sanskrit. Our word shaman comes from that. It doesn't come from the Siberian. That's just where we first heard the term used in that context. So let's continue. Later on, it found its way into Tantra. As a matter of fact, today they call Yogavichara the Theravada Tantra, but it seems to predate Theravada by at least 200-300 years. And it was probably indigenous to India before the Buddha became the Buddha. But Siddhartha Gautama was not opposed to it. As a matter of fact, Siddhartha Gautama, whom we know as the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, actually was the first person to formulate a structured practice of Buddha, or yoga, which surprises a lot of people. Because, oh, this is an ancient thing. Yeah, it goes back to the Buddha who systematized it for the first time, as far as we know. Somebody else could have systematized it 10,000 years ago. We don't have that record. We do have a record of Gautama doing it. So, be that as it may. Now, Yogacara, on the other hand, is a school of Buddhist psychology, and it's not even a uniform school of Buddhist psychology. It's like this umbrella that we have. But we know that Asanga and Vasubandhu did the original formulation as we have it now. And it's very, very soundly based upon the Abhidharma as opposed to the Abhidhamma. There are actually two Abhidharmas, one which is used by the Theravadins and one that was used by the Sarvastivadins. And it's found now in Chinese and in Tibetan Buddhism. And it's a little different in structure and information than the Abhidhamma of the Pali Canon. You can use them both in tandem and you come up with some really interesting things, but that's a different series of talks. That is like an entire lecture, and if you want to do that, you can come to Chicago, you can sit in, you can pay exorbitant amount of money and listen to the Abhidhamma and the Abhidharma, and we'll talk about it for like months on end. So it's a very, very complicated thing. Now, as far as the 5 elements are concerned, the 5 elements practice also found its way into the Pure Land practice, into Zen practice, and into Tantra. The interesting thing is, why is it so important? Well, it's important because it actually takes us through the jhanas, or dhyana, or chan, or zen. These are all different words for the same thing. Jhana is the Pali expression, Dhyana the Sanskrit expression, Chan the Chinese expression, Tien the Vietnamese expression, and Zen the Chinese expression of the same thing. They're just transliterations of the word dhyana. Dhyana, i.e. Zen, does not mean a school of Buddhism. It means a viewpoint of Buddhism. It's the meditative viewpoint. Its process is to use Zen as a means of seeing things as they are 24/7. There is no theory involved. It is only practice. It is constant, continual practice of ekayana, which means single pointed focus on the here and now. Just this now. And that's the practice. Later on, of course, it broke up into schools, and each school has their own take on it. Each school developed its own philosophy about Zen or Chan or Dhyana. And we find when we look at the sermons, especially the bloodstream sermon of Bodhidharma, creating a new school of Buddhism was absolutely the furthest thing from his mind when he put this together. He was very interested in practice. How does dhyana practice translate into enlightenment? Now, Bodhidharma may or may not have been a Mahayana Buddhist, as we understand the term today. The term comes from something called the Awakening of Faith in the Mahayana by a fellow named Ashwagosha, who either taught Nagarjuna or he taught Nagarjuna's teacher. We don't know. We do know that he is one of the patriarchs of Zen. We do know that he's one of the patriarchs of Pure Land, that he's one of the patriarchs of Buddhism. And he was an Indian, lived a very long time ago, and he created or formulated or systematized something called Mahayana. Mahayana was not seen as a school of Buddhism as opposed to Theravada. That came later. What it was seen as, when Ashwagosha talks about Mahayana, he is talking about the greater vehicle of Buddha nature. As a matter of fact, he uses the term Hongaku, which we should be very proud of since we're Hongaku Buddhists. The way that he uses it is in the sense that Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbha, the matrix of suchness, the Hongaku, which was seen at that time as meaning primal or primordial light. That is the pure awareness before conceptualization and discursive thought enter the mind. Ta-da! Nothing mystical about that, is there? Anyway, so this is what Ashwagosha is talking about. He's talking about reliance on our own nature, which is the same nature as that of the Buddha. That is relying upon the greater vehicle of just pure awareness. And when Chinese translators translated this, they translated it as Hongaku. The Bodhidharma says exactly the same thing in his sermons, the ones that survive that we attribute to him, particularly the bloodstream sermon, which he begins with, saying the nature of mind is the nature of Buddha, and whoever has a mind is a Buddha. Essentially, that's what he says. So the five elements practice is a way of getting to that Buddha nature, to that experiencing the Hongaku in its rawest, most primordial, primeval form, which is, according to Dogen, enlightenment itself, just to sit for the sake of sitting. Now, this idea of just sitting in the West seems like a waste of time. When we think of sitting in meditation, we think of a really, really disciplined thing to do, because we have to do something to justify our own existence. We have to be doing something productive. We have to be watching the clock. We have to be making coffee. We have to be making money. How empty is that? Money. Why does money have value? Because we have given it value. Remember, suffering does not exist without meaning. So when we apply meaning to something, we automatically suffer. And how many people are suffering over $1 or $2 now? Okay, fine. Let's get away from the concept of money, the concept of Mahayana, the concept of Theravada, the concept of Hinayana, the concept of Buddha. Let's get to Buddha. Let's stop talking about Buddha. Let's be about Buddha. Meditation is a lousy translation for samadhi. It's a poor translation for sati. Smriti, as it's said in Sanskrit. Very bad translation, because in common usage, I have friends that are not Buddhist, they're Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Native American. And they use the word meditation. And when they talk about meditation, they're talking about mulling things over, thinking about things. Not a good description of what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is samadhi, or dhyana. Other translations of dhyana are trance, which is fundamentally absurd that we would even use that, because that suggests the hypnotic spacing out, altered states of consciousness sort of thing, induced by, I don't know, heavy breathing. When I was younger, I used to do a lot of heavy breathing, and it did lead to altered states, but I'm not allowed to talk about that on video. Now, the other translation for that is absorption, which is literally what the word could mean, but that doesn't quite fit either, because absorption is also a trance-like state. So let's not translate the word dhyana. Let's just leave it as it is. When we practice dhyana, or jhana, I sort of like the sound of jhana. It sounds so French. When we talk about dhyana, we're talking about a process. We're talking about vitaka, that is calming down the conceptualization, dialing it back. We're talking about the next level of dhyana, and the next level of dhyana would be vichara, which is the dialing back of discursive thought. And from that comes upekkha, equanimity, where nothing's good, nothing's bad, nothing's comfortable, nothing's uncomfortable, it just is what it is. Then comes samadhi. And samadhi is that single pointed concentration, focus on now. As a matter of fact, one of the New Age terms for samadhi is the eternal now. time no longer exists in samadhi. There is no past, no futures. There's only this right here. Now these four steps, Vitakka, Vichara, Upekkha, and Samadhi, are the four levels of Rupa Dhyana, or in Pali, Rupa Jhana. And this is the dhyana of forms. That is the concentration of forms. When the Buddha talks about forms, he means like material stuff. Stuff that can be conceptualized. Well, the next step is the Arupa Jhana, and Arupa Jhana means no form jhana, where things are no longer conceptualized, where there's boundless space, boundless existence. There is nothingness, pure emptiness, experienced emptiness, and then there is the state of mind of neither perception nor non-perception. And these are the Arupa jhanas. The Buddha became enlightened, or when he died, experienced parinibbana. He entered it in the Rupa stage of Samadhi. So this was pretty good stuff to the Buddha. If we could just do these four levels of jhana practice, then we're doing fine. We don't have to go any further. As a matter of fact, there are people that they say they have hit that fourth level of samadhi, therefore they are arhats. And that sort of denigrates the arhat to a lower level. To be an arhat is to have totally escaped the bounds of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. You see things for what they are, therefore you're not attached to anything, and you're just living in peace. And that's what an arhat does. Okay, now, the meditation itself. Grab your mala. You have 108 beads. 108 times. Just relax the breath and the mind. Let's make this real simple and non-sectarian. Do that 108 times. The walls will vibrate. Night will turn to day. Day will turn to night. Your grandchildren will love you forever. It's very, very peaceful to do that. Do it 108 times, and seriously, your entire existence is now vibrating at incredible vibrations and frequencies. And I hate to sound like a new ager. I get very relaxed from doing it. I don't know if it has any profound metaphysical effect or not. I just, wow, it is just a way to relax both body and mind. Then you forget that your legs are sitting cross-legged in Padmasana, lotus position, and your legs are hurting, your knees are getting old, and you just space all that out. Okay, notice I did not do any ceremony before that. I didn't do the Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahanto Sama Sambuddhasa. I didn't do the refuge, I didn't do the Bodhisattva vows, the Bodhicitta aspiration or anything. Okay, I carry that within me. I don't have to make a statement saying, oh, this is what I want to do. If the universe doesn't know by now, screw it. It's not going to get it. Okay? That is within me. As a being, as a manifestation of the universe in this particular spatial temporal zone called my body and environment, it is well known. This is my practice. These are my aspirations. This is my vow. This is what I mean by the vow. This is what I mean by the aspiration. This is what I mean by refuge. Okay, I don't have to go any further. It's nice if you're in public to do that because that sort of sets the mood for everybody that this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is a reminder. I personally do not need to be reminded, so I don't do that every time I meditate. You might want to. And if you do, fine, go ahead and do that. Because it does lend a special atmosphere to the meditation. It makes the meditation a special event. It makes it, for some people, very, very, very serious. For others, it's just a lot of wasted words. For me, I'm making a video about the meditation. We've already gone over the vows and stuff in another video. You want to add that to the meditation? Fine, go ahead. Please do, as a matter of fact. It's kind of cool. All right, do you need an altar? No, you can do this anywhere because Buddha nature is everywhere. If by Buddha we mean enlightenment, then enlightenment is everywhere in everything. All we have to do is sort of, using conventional words, tap into it. And that's what meditation, dhyana meditation is about, tapping into that. So now, we've done the Om. Om. Now let us proceed to the visualizations. The first visualization is Earth. You can do this in any order. I like to start with Earth and end with space. Because they seem to be conceptual opposites. So here's what we do with Earth. When we talk about meditation using Earth as an object, we are not talking about the planet, the little blue thing that you see from satellites and other planets. We're talking about dirt, rocks, the stuff that make up the Earth that we experience from our vantage point on Earth. Living here, this is our home. So what we are visualizing, do this with eyes open or closed, it doesn't matter. Looking down at a 45-degree angle with the back erect gives the impression or the feeling of being a mountain. So a mountain is a good object to think about, or a huge boulder, something which is immovable, concrete, weighty. And this is what we're after. We want to know, what does it feel like to be Earth? So we might visualize, if you're into the New Age thing, crystals. You can put a crystal in front of you. I actually have Himalayan salt candle holders, big, massive things with a little hole drilled in top. So a tea candle goes in there, and that's kind of cool because it illuminates the salt. It looks kind of pinkish. I also have a really cool Himalayan salt globe. It's got an LED light in it, so it never gets hot. I've got it plugged in all the time. I'll use that as an object of meditation, where I'll just look into it. That's my Earth right there, that's salt. Or I'll use a rock. I'll just pick up a rock from the alley out here, put it down in front of me, and that's a rock. Now, the physical object of meditation is used to anchor us, and we keep our eyes on it. Well, you're not going to be able to keep your eyes open all the time. You're going to have to close them, but an after image will appear behind your eyelids, and then you use that as the focus of meditation until you open your eyes again. So something earthy. If you're really good at visualization, you can just close your eyes and visualize a stone, a boulder, a mountain, a mine shaft, a cave, or things of the earth like moss, trees, fields, wheat fields, grass fields, forests, whatever it is that you want to. The idea is to get fixed and focused on that and slow down, dial back the conceptualization, which sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? Because you're conceptualizing an image. Well, you're trying to dial back the intellectual conceptualizations and the discursive thoughts around them. So if you're imagining, you go, oh, there's a field and there are flowers, and oh, isn't that cool? That's wonderful. Oh, look, a butterfly. Isn't that nice? Then you're missing the point. Simply visualize without involving yourself in language. Get rid of the language. That's one of the points. Dialing back the conceptualization, dialing back the discursive thinking, which happens to do with language. Then the feeling of peace, equanimity. With equanimity comes joy, peace, contentment, and so forth. Now, after you've done that, you can do that all day long if you want. You can make that your whole practice, or you can take 10 minutes and do that. Then take 10 minutes and go to water. Water is easy too because it's weighty. There's substance there. You can touch it. You can get wet with it. So when we think about water, we think about fluidity. The water can be any temperature, hot, cold, cool, tepid, whatever. Just imagining water, free-flowing water, like in a stream, or the ocean waves, that's more water. And we're visualizing that element. Now with the earth element, we felt weightiness, the weightiness of our body, of our being. Now we're looking at the fluidity of being. We've got a lot of water in us, right? We've got blood, we've got fluids, we have all these other aspects of the human body which are watery, so, or fluidy. And so this fluidity is now translated into the mind, and we're looking at objects which are fluid. And it's best to pick just one. Now, if you are a person that doesn't visualize very well and needs something material in front of them, a bowl of water works just fine. Or you can go down here in the Chicago area, we've got Lake Michigan out there. Huge lake, big lake, almost looks as big as a sea. So we can go down there and we can watch the waves go back and forth and listen to the screaming kids that were dropped off by Screaming Baby Airline not too long ago. And we can listen to the waves as they hit the water, we can watch the waves as they flow, or we can just take a bowl of water and just look at it. And that can be the object of meditation. But the idea is to look at the fluidity. As Bruce Lee said, water can take any shape. Thanks to emptiness, we can take any shape as well. We can be fluid, we can flow, we can change our shape just by changing our position. By changing the context of our being, we become a new being. And so this is the lesson behind the water. Let's go to air now. Air surrounds us. We do not see air any more than a fish sees water. Air is part of our environment. So how do we visualize water? Well, how about tall grass blowing in the wind, or a flag blowing, or a tree moving in the wind? Motion has a lot to do with air. We can't move if there were no air. We'd be stuck, solidified. So this is another aspect that we can meditate upon when we meditate upon air. Okay, now that you're finished with that, now you've got 30 minutes into this meditation, or 15 if you're only doing it for 5 minutes at a time. But I don't think you can get the whole sense of the object of meditation in just 5 minutes. I quite frankly don't think you can do it in 10 minutes. I really believe that if you do this right and you're really trying to get into the sense of these 5 elements, we're talking an all-day trip here. We're meditating on one element, take a break, go back, do the next element. So, air. We breathe. Breath is an incredibly powerful symbol or image of the air meditation, because it gives us life. It sustains our body. If we don't breathe, we're not alive. So we need air, and this is one thing, the necessity of it. We need the solidity of the body. We need the earth elements in our body to kind of hold us together. We need the fluidity of water to exist, because that's what our blood is made of. The heart is constantly pumping blood. And we need the breath, which oxygenates the blood and feeds the cells of our body, which are mostly water with some earth. So the next thing we're talking about is fire. By fire, we're talking about heat, either the absence of heat or the presence of heat. So this is interesting here, because heat comes in many, many forms. There is heat if it's 40 below zero. There is heat if there's 40 above zero. Heat is a relative term. What is hot to me may be cold to someone else. This room, for instance, I'm very warm and comfortable in this room. And yet this morning when we had meditation, we had people complaining how cold it is in here. So, it's very relative. Ways to meditate on heat. Over the years, I've come to really think about or visualize the sun, or heat waves rising up from pavement. The waves themselves become the object of visualization for me. Other people like fire. Some people like candles. Some people like the sun. What we're trying to get at is the feeling of warmth. Our body has to be 98.6 degrees or thereabouts in order for us to live a normal, healthy life. So this is the sort of thing that heat. Heat is also energy. So we need energy, this vitality, to continue our existence. So when we're paying attention to heat, we're paying attention to raw energy. Light is raw energy. Movement is raw energy. Potential energy, like a cat ready to spring upon a mouse, that is energy. So we have all these different facets of heat that we can use as objects of meditation. It doesn't have to be fire or a match or a candle. It can be, use your imagination. That's what it's there for, after all. You paid good money for it. Use it. The imagination tells us that energy forms, or energy is manifest in 100 different ways. Hundreds of ways. So we can use any one of those ways to show us how heat affects us and affects everything else. So now we move on to the next one, space. Space is cool because how do you meditate on space? You know, night sky, what? Now, here's how we do it. And this is the easiest way to think of it, hardest way to do. You pick a point. I'm going to pick my fingertip. Now there's space in between, right? But if I look at my fingertip, the fingertip becomes the object of meditation. If I'm looking at the space between the fingertip and me, my eye, then I am thinking about distance. I'm not thinking about space. I'm thinking about distance. Distance is different than space. So what I do is I concentrate right here, at this spot right here, between me and the finger. In Zen, it's really interesting because when we meditate in Zazen and we're staring at the wall, a la the instruction, vis-a-vis the instructions of Bodhidharma, we're not looking at the wall. We're looking at about 3 or 4 inches away from the wall toward us. So we're looking at space in between us and the wall, the perceived us and the wall. So our field of perception gets narrowed all the way down to this point in the middle of nowhere. And that is the object of meditation for the space meditation. Why is space so important? Because we live in a conventional world. One of the things that makes the conventional world recognizable is because there is space, which provides distance in between all these objects. If there were no space between the computer screen you're watching me on right now and your eye, you could not see the computer screen. There is no space between you, or better yet, no space between your eyeball and itself. Therefore, you cannot see your eyeball. If there is no space between your fingertip and your eye, oh, Lord, that hurts. There's no space there. You can't see the finger. There has to be space so you can see. And it has to be a specific space. This is too close to actually see my hand. I have to put it out here to see it. But then if I put it out too far, if that were possible, then I couldn't see it again. The image would be distorted. So space is incredibly important to the way we perceive things. That's the message of space. Why space is important in meditation. So give that 5, 10, 20 minutes. And then at the end of the meditation, tie it all together. Bring them all together as one object. And you'll have to use your imagination to decide how that is done. Now, where do all these things fit in reality? Where do they fit in reality? They make up our reality. This is what creates atoms, subatomic particles. This is what makes quantum physics possible. This is what makes the holographic mind possible. This is what makes the galaxies, the universe, possible. These 5 elements: earth, water, air, fire, space. Without these things, there is no existence. And that's why they are so phenomenally important to us. This is why they are a rich fountain to draw upon during our meditation. It gives us a whole new perspective on our being and the being of the things that we perceive around us. People, for instance. cats, dogs, mountains, trees. That these are characteristics that they have. And it's kind of a cool meditation. It's a great way to kill an afternoon. So this is why we do it. But the real effect should be that state of samadhi, which gives us access and entry into seeing, experiencing, perceiving things as they actually are, right here, right now. Total awareness. Hongaku. Primordial awareness, primordial light. And that's why we do it. Calm the mind, get rid of the discursive thought, eliminate confusion, and simply be aware. And that is the episode for the Sensei Mui show today. Good night.